Space Giraffe for Xbox Live Arcade, the latest title by veteran game designer Jeff the Yak Minter, the man behind the classic Tempest 2000. At first glance, Space Giraffe looks very similar to Tempest, and it is in fact possible to play the game in the same way in the early levels, but that's not what you're supposed to do. In Jeff's own words, Space Giraffe is the anti-Tempest. The game is based on a line drawn in 3D space with a surface extending from it called the Power Zone. The Power Zone is constantly getting smaller, but can be extended by shooting enemies or through the use of jump pods which can be collected in the levels. The main difference between Space Giraffe and Tempest is that as long as you have any Power Zone remaining, enemies who make it up onto the rim of the level can be knocked off by ploughing into them from the side, which the game calls bullying. As you get considerably more points by doing this rather than just shooting the enemies, in many situations it's worth letting as many enemies as possible make their way to the top of the level, and then activating a jump pod to extend the Power Zone and bull them all off. You can also deflect enemy bullets by shooting at them, which will eventually reflect off the far end of the level. Keep bouncing these off the back wall, and any still in play when the level ends earn you sneeze bonuses. Obviously, the more bullets you keep in play in this way, the greater the chance that you'll get hit, so this becomes an interesting risk-reward balance to maintain in the background of dealing with the enemies themselves. The concept behind Space Giraffe is very solid, and the game plays like nothing else you've ever seen, and can be quite fun when you get the hang of it. Unfortunately, the game is seriously let down by its graphical style. The game is actually built on the same engine as the 360's music visualization software, also made by Llamasoft, and as such is full of bright colours and trippy effects. That's all very well and good when you're listening to music, but when you're trying to play a game it's another story. You'll die constantly and have no idea why, because whatever hits you will have been covered up by the bloom effects. The challenge only increases when you consider the different enemy types. Flowers, for example, are invincible and grow up the level on a stalk, which can be shortened by firing at the head, but once it gets above the rim creates a barrier that you can't touch until it dissipates. Boffins alternate between moving horizontally, where they can be killed in one hit, and vertically when they're invincible and shooting at them only makes them approach faster. Once on the rim they can't be bulled and can only be dealt with by jumping above them and shooting. As such, you have to be very careful with how you treat enemies, especially when they get onto the rim. However, identifying them amongst the flare can be tricky, especially when there's more than one type close together. In a game that encourages you to lunge into crowds of enemies, not knowing if doing so will get you a bonus or kill you is pretty much unforgivable. Some might say that not being able to see is part of the challenge, and in fact some enemies will attack by deliberately lowering visibility, but I think that the option to turn off the effects would have made the game a lot more fun. The different stages could simply be described as different lines in space, but they do become quite clever in their layout and the way that enemy waves are used. Some of the geometry involved makes the lack of visibility a lot worse, which again might be the point, but doesn't make the game any less annoying to play. It's a real shame because otherwise the game's presentation is very good. As you'd expect from a man whose back catalogue includes Sheep in Space, Attack of the Mutant Camels and Llamatron, the game is infused with a very eccentric sense of humour. The sound effects are addictive little non-sequiturs, and the end of level rankings will tell you that you're meh and nearly good, and the achievements are called things like the Great Green Arkle Seizure, for getting 20 sneeze bonuses naturally. The music isn't really my sort of thing, but fits in well with the psychedelic nature of the game. So, is Space Giraffe worth 400 Microsoft points? Sorry Jeff, but I don't think so. Although apparently some people really love it, so I suppose the best advice would be to try the demo. The idea behind the game is really good, but the whole package is let down by the frustration of constantly dying without understanding why. I didn't put up with it in Halo 3 multiplayer, and I'm not about to put up with it here.